Time for this week's RSPW Rewind. When Hulk Hogan signed with WCW, they threw him a ticker tape parade. If you remember, that was back in '94. It was the biggest signing in WCW history. He came in, he immediately won the title from Ric Flair. And on RSPW, there was a lot of divided opinion about Hogan. Some who thought it was smart for WCW to bring him in, others who thought it was a terrible move and that Hogan was yesterday's news and he wouldn't put anyone over. Hogan was a very big target for many years in that news group. People, by and large, did not like the guy. But there may have been no post that I have been able to find more vitriolic and violently negative on Hogan than this one that we start with here this week. From June 29th, 1995. A little over a year before he would turn heel and form the NWO, there's a post from Frank J. Pitts titled "A Message to Hulk Hogan." And here's what it says. "Well, for starters, I must say this to you, Mr. Hogan," as though Hogan is sitting there reading RSPW posts. We know he's reading The Observer because he went on a WCW pay-per-view and actually held a copy in his hand and said, "Observe this, brother." But yeah, I don't think Hogan was sitting reading RSPW back then. But I digress. He says, "For starters, I must say this to you, Mr. Hogan. Fuck you. I hate you." He made sure to say that in all caps. "Look at what you've done, you egotistical puke. You've managed to make a joke of several wrestling legends like Ric Flair and Vader. You've now made a mockery of good wrestling entertainment. You think that you are a god in WCW, making stupid-ass small movies involving Kevin Sullivan and having a bullshit I want to be a Hulkamaniac video and actually believing that people like you. Kids like you, supposedly. How much do you pay them? I hate you." Wow. I can feel the anger radiating from Frank just reading this. And this was, what, 95, right? That's almost, wait, what is that? 25 years ago? Almost? Holy cow. It says, "I can't believe that at one time when I first started watching pro wrestling at the tender age of 12, I actually liked you because I was a kid. And kids are supposed to make stupid mistakes. I realized there was a time when you were the shit. You were the heat. You were the cat's ass." I don't think I've ever heard that before. "You made the rock and wrestling connection, but times are different now. You are a nobody, just trying to make bucks so you can make payments on whatever new drug you are pumping into yourself. You are probably butt-fucking Bischoff, which is why you get to call the shots in WCW, making a mockery of true wrestlers who can put on great shows. I am actually losing respect for great wrestlers like Flair, Vader, Savage, etc. I wish somebody would come in and break your leg, shave your balding head, and make you really twitch by cracking your ribs. You really deserve it now. Lots of people on RSPW probably wish the same thing. Doesn't anyone there at WCW offices actually read what we put on the net? No." I'll answer that. No. "Don't they realize that people really hate you? I wish they would air some of the Hogan hater signs that people have at the shows. That way the public can really see what people think of you. You are a hated man, Hogan. I, for one, hate you." Really? I hadn't realized that up to this point. I had not realized that Frank hated the Hulkster. I'm glad he clarified that. Now, at this point in the post, I will say, things took a dark turn. So this is what he said. "I wish somebody would make you a marked man and shoot you on a live pay-per-view. Maybe I'm sounding a bit cruel or heartless, but I feel like I had to state an opinion of how I feel about you. Plus, your movies sucked, as well as your Blunder in Paradise show. I can't believe I actually watched it. I deserve to be shot for watching that show. But I wanted to see Sting kick your ass. Tell me, Hogan, why do you think you are God? Do you think you have an ego problem? Were you a hated child? Did you wear saggy diapers that leaked and now you want to live out the fantasy of being a god? Anyway, I had to get this off my chest. Fuck you, Hogan. Fuck you, Bischoff. You two can go fuck each other like I'm sure you do anyway. For those who may think Twitter and social media today is a toxic platform, before all of that, there was RSPW and people like Frank. But the best part of his post was maybe the very end, where after everything that I just read to you, where after everything that he said, all of the crazy stuff, he signs it at the bottom with Bob Backlund for Prez in 96. And that explains so much. That explains a lot. He and Crazy Bob have a lot in common. Frank could have been his running mate. Martin Smith, in the very first reply to Frank's post, said very simply, "Little too much coffee this morning, sir." We skip ahead 1 year. Bash at the Beach 96. Hulk Hogan turned his back on WCW. He aligned with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash to form the New World Order. New World Order. New World Order is what Larry Zbyszko would call it. I don't know how I just said that. That's what Zbyszko used to call them. The New World Order. I guess he thought it was funny. He would say it every friggin' week. Anyway, this was posted the very next morning after the big Bash at the Beach turn, which still, here we are now over 20 years later. And objectively, you can just look at that and say that it was maybe the biggest turn of any kind that was ever made in the history of pro wrestling. Certainly one of the biggest angles. One of the biggest nights, one of the most memorable nights in the history of pro wrestling in this country was that Bash at the Beach show on July 7, 1996. Well, this post came the morning of July 8th, 1996. Scotty C had this to say about Hogan and the angle. Let me just start off by congratulating Eric Bischoff on a very well done angle to this point, and hope the egomaniac, HH, doesn't screw it up. I have something to say, not to everyone here in RSPW, but to a majority of people who were constantly ripping Hogan and now want to cheer him on. You are some of the most fickle, mindless, juvenile walk-behinders I have ran into in a very long time. When Hogan bashing was in vogue, which it still was just hours before last night's great pay-per-view, there were people posting daily on why they hated Hogan, how he was ruining WCW, and how he can't wrestle and he refuses to sell his opponent's best moves. All of which was and still is true. But some of these same people are now posting crap about how Hulkamania is back, and how much Hogan rules now that he, for once in his life, went along with a WCW storyline that does not involve him looking like the next coming of Jesus. Truth be told, I have never liked Hogan, and I still don't. I never would have guessed that. I give him credit for growing up, and admit that I have a little more respect for him this morning than I did last morning. God knows it had to be tough for Hulk to lose all that merchandising money, and the irreparable damage it has done to his booming movie career. LOL, he says. But to say that he is cool again, and to say that he rules, is just very ignorant. This guy still hasn't wrestled a decent match in a very long time, and still will probably screw with WCW booking, and still is an egomaniac. Come on, guys, let's grow up here. I had the pleasure of seeing some posts here along the same lines. It does my heart good to see that some decently intelligent people are still around here. Don't be fooled. Hogan will eventually turn face again, and somehow I can just see the hate or the I hate Hogan posts now. Chris Arians responds, I think the Hogan turn brings RSPW more of a sense of relief. Relief that we don't have to watch Hogan win every match with the Hulk up, big boot, and the leg drop of doom. Everybody knows that Hogan's never going to become a better worker, but if it means the end of Hogan's tired old say your prayers and eat your vitamins shtick, it's good for wrestling on the whole. And since Hogan's now a heel, we get to see him job, or at least win by screw job. I can't say that with the heel turn I'm now a Hogan fan, but I'm curious to see what's going to happen, whereas before, the thought of watching another Hogan match made me sick to my stomach. I think much of RSPW feels the same way. In my opinion, the WWF really missed the boat when they brought back the Warrior. His act is as stale as Hogan's, and his career would have benefited greatly from a heel turn. Now it would be dismissed as a desperate move. Somebody tell Vince that superheroes just don't fly anymore. Terry Bollea / Eric Bischoff listened to the fans who wanted to see something other than the same old repetitive crap. And he delivered. Now we shall see. Can the WWF deliver as well? Now the next day, on July 9th, the discussion continued with this post from Derek Mechalese titled, "Why Did Hogan Turn Heel?" So the real reason that Hogan is a heel now is that the heels in WCW are tired of jobbing to him. That means Hogan turns and voila, the faces now can job for him until his contract runs out. Instant pool of people to job now. Then he'll make a quick face turn again. Seriously, I've never seen anything like this. The pukester of wrestling. The butt end of jokes and who people mock for years makes a heel turn, and now he's awesome. Who can get excited about a 50-year-old big fat windbag who no-sells everything and jobs to nobody? Razor and Diesel must be disappointed how Eric played this one out. It's not the outsider's angle, it's Hogan's angle. The push to save his pathetic career. Nash and Hall created the heat. Now take a back seat, you two. Hogan is running off his mouth. Hogan jumps in when a good thing got going. A while back, a lot of people mocked WWF pushing Jake the Snake Roberts in the King of the Ring. How could an old guy like that get that far? Well, take a look at Hogan. I think this is worse than the Jake push. How does Hogan end up with Hall and Nash? WCW against WWF? Nope. It's Hogan's ego angle. This one is screwed already. But I guess all the Hogan supporters now were always Hogan supporters. Go rent some tapes and watch Hogan wrestle. That'll teach you. And then we have a week later. On July 16th, 1996, a parent named Kelly Ray Curl. I kind of assumed it was a mom, but I guess Kelly could be a guy's name too. So we'll say it was a parent. It was a parent named Kelly Ray Curl. Made a post titled, "WCW can stick it as far as I'm concerned." Says, "Okay, first off, I am not a mark, but I thought I would share this little bit of information with the rest of RSPW. Let me just jump in here real quick. If you have to preface your post with the words, 'I am not a mark,' chances are you're a mark." Moving on. It was Bash at the Beach time, and my kids, ages 6 and 8, were sitting watching the mayhem and enjoying the action right up to the main event. Then, after Hogan did his heel turn, my 2 young and very impressionable children sat there in front of the TV in shock. They began to cry after that, and I had to comfort them and wipe away their tears, and I put them to bed. I was awakened by the sound of my son's screams around 3 a.m. or so, and when I went in to check on him, he said that he had a dream that Hogan was coming to get him. Probably the same dream that Hogan had after Booker T told him the same thing. She says, or he says, "My child worshipped the ground that man walked on, and this pathetic, subhumanoid, balding, middle-aged freak has scarred my children for life." Hogan telling Hulkamaniacs to stick it, in my opinion, has the same effect as having the mall Santa tell your kids to get the fuck off his lap at Christmas. So in closing, thank you, Terry Bollea, for screwing up my kids. Maybe next time I'll let them choose a better role model, like maybe Dennis Rodman or someone. The replies to this post, which I think, look, it's impossible for me to know if it was a troll post or not. I didn't read it as a troll post, and there were other replies within. I take it this person has posted before, that it's a legitimate post. And there were replies, and the replies were not kind. To Kelly Ray, we had this one guy, Peter, who said, "Take your kids, jump in your car, and drive off the nearest cliff." Signed, Peter, doing my part to save the gene pool. Then we had Joe Petro. He said, "I guess they were never real Hulkamaniacs. One of the provisions of Hulkamania, right after Believe in Yourself, was believe in Hulk Hogan. That means under all circumstances, never doubt what Hulk Hogan does, because ultimately Hulk Hogan is the most powerful, positive force in the universe. But the first time that faith is put to the test, everybody jumps ship." Figures. And then we had HLY Soldier. Hey, I feel bad for the kids. Yeah, Santa is fake, there's no Tooth Fairy, and Sesame Street's characters are all puppets. There can be a valuable lesson, though, for kids here, Kelly, and you can be that role model to guide them through all of this. Okay, this is getting weird now. Let's move on to this last post from April 13, 1997 by Adam Donahue. I was just browsing through the RSPW archives and reading the pre-Bash at the Beach 96 messages. Man, no one predicted that Hogan heel turn. It's not even on the radar screen. I think one or two people mentioned it, but most were completely in the dark. That's the way a good angle should run. And then we got a reply from Deepak Chabra or Chupacabra, whatever the fuck. He disagreed with that assessment. He said yes and no. If an angle/storyline makes sense, and nobody saw it coming, then you can say that it was booked well or executed well. But if nobody saw it coming because it's so galactically stupid that no clear-thinking individual would even bother to suggest it, then it is not good booking. It is a galactically stupid angle that no clear-thinking individual would ever even bother suggesting. Hogan's heel turn was, in reality, idiotic from a logistical standpoint. The reason it was done was simply that the people were booing the hell out of him when he was still playing the Hulkamaniac role. But aside from that, why would he all of a sudden turn heel? No reason whatsoever. Same deal with Randy Savage joining the NWO. Was that predicted by people on this news group? I'm guessing not, but I know I wasn't paying much attention, so I could be wrong. Speaking for myself, I never would have guessed or suggested that it would happen. Why? Because that is the most utterly dumbass thing I have seen in wrestling since Sergeant Slaughter's Iraqi angle. On a smaller scale, before Spring Stampede, did anybody predict the idiotic conclusion to the Benoit-Malenko match? Probably not, but surely we can agree that it was far from a demonstration on how a good angle should be run. So, this kind of goes to the heart of even now when there's like a heel turn or a babyface turn and everybody complains, oh, it makes no sense. It made no sense. This was going on long before these discussions were even happening here today. And so this has been your weekly reminder that wrestling fans are not any more cynical now than they were back then. Social media just makes it a lot easier for them to speak their mind. Those that haven't totally lost them.